Hello everyone. Today I'm doing a video that I have been waiting for a very long time to do, and that is a manual transmission. This video is for anybody out there who lives in the United States and maybe you haven't had any access to manuals and you finally got access, or you're planning on maybe getting an instructor and you're a little nervous, so you're preparing. Or for those in Europe who maybe are just getting their license for the first time, or maybe you just had an automatic license and you're thinking of upgrading, this is a good video for you. So I want to get as straight into it as I can. Basically, I'm going to explain how the transmission itself works. Basically, the transmission and the engine are separated by the clutch. When you push in the clutch, they separate, and when it's released, they're very close to each other and they're spinning. So if you try to put it in gear while that's happening, it doesn't really work. You push the clutch in, those separate. This is able to find the teeth, the gears, and it's able to go. That's my understanding of it. That's pretty much the mechanics of it. You don't have to understand it fully to get it. I'm not a mechanic, so people in the comments I know are going to be talking about how I must have gotten something wrong or whatever. I mean, I'm not a professional in that regard, so I'm not going to be the best at describing that, but those are just the basics on how it really works. That's why you push the clutch in, to separate the engine and the transmission. Once you release it, they kind of go back together. They're not like on top of each other, because then they wouldn't be able to spin, but everything's kind of spinning, and that's how it works. So the basics, pretty much, you got your parking brake, which you're always going to have up if the car is in neutral and you're not moving. Some of them have a foot brake, which, I mean, if I'm getting a manual, I do like the hand brake. It's a lot more convenient, but to each their own. And you have the gear shifter, you have the clutch, and obviously you have the brake and the accelerator, which every car has, those two. So let's put the handbrake down. So the first thing you're going to notice in a manual transmission is, depending on what vehicle you have, the clutch may be very, very heavy or very, very light. If you're learning in a pickup truck, one of those old big ones that are mainly used for farming, you may notice your experience might be a little different, because those you can start in second gear, which you can start in second gear in realistically any vehicle, but most vehicles you're gonna be starting in first. Those are mainly meant for like farming, crawling very slowly. I've heard very many stories about those, but it depends. And if you're driving a diesel, it might be a little bit different too, because those engines are different. So just the way the car feels and moves and acts is always going to be different. Cars like an SUV or a hatchback, it's going to be a different experience between those two. It's going to be a different experience if you drive a sedan, whatever. So you're going to notice when you push down the clutch, it's either going to be very light or very heavy. So the first thing I want you to get straight is you will stall. I've heard stories of people that didn't stall. Like some of my friends, I've taught people how to drive manual before, they stalled. But I know people who have taught people how to drive manual, and they described their experience as shocked because that person didn't stall. That's very rare. You might be one of those people, but you are probably going to stall. And even if you don't stall while you train, you're going to end up stalling one day. It just happens. Manual transmissions are human powered, pretty much. Human activated. It's not an automatic, so it's not going to be perfect. You are going to stall at some point, so don't be embarrassed. You are here to learn, and without mistakes, you cannot learn at all. You learn from the mistakes, and you keep going. That's what makes you a great learner. All right, let's get into it. So, first step, push the clutch in all the way. Pushing the clutch in all the way ensures that you get a very smooth shift, and you're not grinding any gears or, putting the stick in and it messes anything up, the synchros, whatnot. So you want to push the clutch all the way in, slide it into first gear, and the first thing I want you to do is you can take your foot off the brake and just go up on the clutch with your left foot very, very, very slowly. Very, very, very slowly. You are going to want to feel the car start to crawl forward. Now, the point at which this starts happening is called the bite point. See, the car is rolling now. It's going to be different on every car. This one is a little higher up, but I've driven cars that it's even higher up, and I've driven cars where it's a little lower, but that is the bite point. And you'll notice in some cars in first gear, I don't have my foot on the clutch. I didn't accelerate at all, and it is still rolling. I didn't accelerate, didn't brake, whatever, and it is still rolling. This to me was a little bit of a shock when I learned manual, because I always thought you have to give it gas. You know, a lot of the older people that I've talked to always made manual sound so scary and like you have to be urgent and this, that, and the other, and it's just not like that. So we're gonna come around this corner and I'll get to the next step. That was a very bad start. I just don't want to be blocking here. So once you really learn where the bite point is, and again, the bite point is the point at which when you release the clutch, the car starts moving. Once you get to that point, just freeze your foot there, really learn that point. You wanna get the clutch to the bite point and then stop it. Stop the car, release the brake, and bite point again. Once you get pretty comfortable with this, that is when you can start adding acceleration. Now, here's what the next step is going to be, adding acceleration, obviously. So, right now, car's in neutral, not moving, foot's on brake, whatever, you might have the handbrake up. Foot all the way into the clutch, put it in first gear, release the clutch to the bite point, and while you do that, just a little bit of acceleration. And boom, you just took off. Perfect. That was perfect. I'm very proud. You might have stalled, and that's okay. And I will go over some problems that I personally had and that I've seen other people have and that you might be having right now. So the one problem I see a lot of people have, and I've seen more people have it than not, and even I had this problem when I was starting out, is they rev it way too high. So before even getting to the bite point. So you're not even at the bite point and you're already at 2,000 RPMs, 3,000 RPMs, because you're a little worried. But you should know that at least one thing you should know is that it will become more natural. You're not going to, you might feel the accelerator is a little sensitive, and you will get used to that. That is a 100% guarantee. Everything in a manual you will get used to. Now, another mistake I see people make is they just don't go hard enough on the acceleration, or they don't release the clutch enough and they end up dropping revs. Now, again, that was a mistake that I made, and sometimes I still make that mistake. It's a process. You're gonna be making a lot of mistakes within the first year. You're gonna keep making mistakes throughout the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th year, because you're not an automatic transmission. You're not gonna be perfect. So, clutch in, first gear, give it some gas, get to the bite point, and you can release. If you're confident about how many RPMs you're at, you can always just release the clutch fully, but you don't want to be too high, because if you're too high RPMs, you might just launch forward, and you don't want that happening. And that is a very, very bad idea. So let's get back over here. Just one more start for y'all. I can even show you how to start with a parking brake, which you would only really need to be using on hills, which is going to be a little hard to find a hill here in Florida, but I'll try. Clutch in, first gear, and accelerate. Release the clutch. You can kind of come off of it pretty confidently if you're around 1.5 to 2K RPMs. Sometimes if you're a little below that, your revs might just drop down below, and you might be crawling a little too much, which can be a problem. All right. So the next step is upshifting. Now, you've learned first gear, you've learned how to start, you're confident with your starts. Always get the start down first, get confident with it. It is probably the hardest part about learning a manual transmission, depending on who you are. Some people find downshifting a little harder. Some people might get the start so easy and then they struggle with shifting up. Everybody's different. But for most people, starting is the hardest part. But I will teach you guys how to upshift now. You should have starting down by this point. So, first gear, release the clutch to the bite point while slowly giving it revs. And now, once you hear the revs climb up a little bit, clutch in, bring it down to second, and release the clutch while giving it a little bit of gas. Now, here is the thing. Here's the thing, you don't technically, if you're like me and you're in a parking lot, you don't really have to give it really any gas when you release the clutch when you're shifting up, because most of the time you have enough RPMs to where it's not really going to drop below. You're not going to stall if you don't give it some gas. But if you're going to be driving on the roads, you're going to be giving it gas when you get off the clutch. So clutch in, first gear, give it a little bit of gas while releasing the clutch, bring it to the bite point and come off. Clutch in, second gear, give it a little gas while you release the clutch. Now, the thing about the RPMs, again, it's going to be different in every car, but you will be able to hear it, you can feel it. The hearing is mostly like, you can kind of understand it once, you know, the car's going to go, and, you know, at the higher point, you're going to want to shift into second. So I'm in first gear right now. Clutch in, second gear, release the clutch while putting foot on the gas just a little bit. You don't have to go super hard. You're not driving on the road right now. You're just in a parking lot, just chilling. Come around here. Now, by now, you should have the start down. You should have first and second down. Now, the issue is sometimes when people learn, they end up getting a little plateau and they might end up starting to kind of falter on the things they've already learned. So, let's just get a quick refresher on the starting. Clutch in, get it to first gear, release the clutch slowly while you give it a little bit of gas, get to the bite point and release while you give it gas. Boom. On this vehicle, second gear, usually the gear changes are around 3,000 RPMs on this car. I don't know if that's going to be the same for every car. I mean, it's not going to be. Every car is going to be different. But a lot of cars, there might be a fair range. I'm sure within 2.5 to 4K, 4.5K. Usually when you shift up, some people go a little more, some people go even less, I think, but I usually go around 3.5. So you got starting down, got first gear, second gear, and now you're worried about third gear. Okay, so third gear, I'm gonna put the clutch in, put it into first gear, start up, clutch in, second gear, clutch out while I release, or while I put my foot into the gas. I'm gonna come around here and I'm gonna stay in second gear and I'm gonna speed up into third. And it's the same concept as second gear. Clutch in, third gear, release the clutch while you give it a little bit of gas. It is the same concept. Once you get first and second down, you can get all of the gears down. Once you can shift from first to second, you can shift from second to third. And you can shift from third to fourth, fourth to fifth, fifth to sixth if you're in a 6-speed. This is a 5-speed. Speed meaning gears. So 5-speed is 5 gears. 6 speed is 6 gears, 7 speed, you know what I mean. Now, for the big bad wolf, which is downshifting. A lot of people don't really understand downshifting too much. So, you use downshifting when you obviously are slowing down. You can either use it while you're slowing down just because you don't want to stall, or you can use it to help you slow down through something called engine braking. Now, what happens in engine braking is when you put the car into a lower gear, it essentially purges the engine of, I believe it purges the engine of air for a second. It creates sort of a vacuum chamber that the cylinders have to overcompensate for, and that ends up causing some, that's Ferrari over there, causing some sort of pressure buildup and release, which slows the car down. So, let's get clutch in, first gear, start up. Now I'm only in second gear because I want to already be in second gear so I can get into third gear so I can show you guys downshifting. Let's turn around here. Clutch in, third gear, release the clutch while I press the gas just a little bit. Now I'm going to come around here, push the clutch in, bring it down to second gear, release the clutch slowly, and usually I was already slowing down because I wanted to go around that turn. There's not much room here. I will probably show you better downshifting out on the road. But the revs climb up, and as the revs climb up, the car slows down. Engine starts to work a little bit. Now, there are ways, when you downshift, you are going to feel the car kind of lurch forward a little bit. There are ways to mitigate that, and I will teach that in future videos. But for now, we're just learning how to up and downshift the simple way. Now, I think once you have first, second, and third gear down, and you can downshift from third to second, I think it's pretty safe to say you can probably get out on the road. Because it's a little bit dangerous to try to get up to fourth gear, depending on what car you have. In a parking lot, it's just not enough room. You might end up trying to turn and flipping the car, or crashing into a wall, or ramping the car off a curb, and I wouldn't want that to happen. So if you can get the car up to third gear safely, and you can learn first, second, and third, and then third to second, then I think you're just about ready for the road. There's one more thing I need to teach you, and that is coming to a complete stop, which I believe I forgot. All right. Now, I'm going to shift up to second gear, clutch in, second gear, release the clutch while giving it some gas. Now, when you're coming to a complete stop, you can hit the brakes. If you're already in second gear, just ease on the brakes. And when you start to feel the car shake, that means it is about to stall. That is when you want to push in the clutch and just take it out of second gear and put it into neutral. When you're sitting at a stoplight, a traffic light, or a stop sign, and you think you're going to be there for a while, or maybe, the stop sign, you have to come to a complete stop. So if you're at one of those two, you don't want to just be sitting there, in second gear, just holding the clutch, or maybe you put it back into first gear. Usually you won't be downshifting into first gear. I usually don't downshift into first gear. I, most of the time, will put it into neutral for a second, let the revs drop a little bit, and put it into first. The car won't let you put it into first gear most of the time if there's not an optimal amount of revs for it. So, you just don't want to be sitting there with your foot on the clutch. It's just going to wear out your leg, and some people say it wears out your clutch. Some people say having the clutch all the way in doesn't really make a difference, but teach their own. I personally keep it in neutral at a stoplight. It's just much simpler that way. And I usually take it out of gear when the car starts shaking just a little bit. You're not going to stall as long as you keep on top of it. So, let's get on the road. Clutch in, start the car up, bite point and release. Now another cool thing about manual transmissions is that when you release the gas pedal on these, they slow down a lot more than automatics. That is pretty cool. It allows you to come to a stop without having to bear down on your brakes, or at least slow down more without having to bear down on your brakes as much. You're gonna still have to get on your brakes every so often, but you can get around a curve without having to smash on your brakes. All right, on the road, clutch in, second gear, release clutch while pushing gas. Third gear, clutch in, third gear, release the clutch while pushing the gas. Now this is uncharted territory, fourth gear. Now, it's gonna be the same as second and third gear. So, clutch in, fourth gear, release the clutch while pushing in the gas. It's as simple as that, nothing else to it. Now, another question a lot of people have with downshifting, because we're about to get to a point where I'm going to need to downshift. Can you skip gears? And the answer is yes, as long as you are at the right speed, at the right revs to do so, and you're not going to cause the car to just blast up in revs. And I'll show you why it's better to skip gears, because watch. Look at how unnecessary it is to just go from fourth to third and then third to second. That was fairly unnecessary, and especially if you're in like fifth gear, you're not going to want to fifth, fourth, third, third, second, and then neutral. You can go fifth, third, third, second, or fifth, fourth, second. All right. Start back up. All right, first, clutch in, second gear, release clutch while pushing in gas, and you're gonna have shifts that feel really rough, and you're gonna have shifts that feel really smooth. Clutch in, third gear, release clutch while putting in the gas. It's just a learning process. It can take years to get perfect at it. It can take years to understand it, and it can take decades to really get crisp and smooth with it, because it's a process that's usually automated. People just, it's just very hard to get to that level. Clutch in, fourth gear, release clutch while putting in gas, and I'm gonna go up to fifth gear now. Fifth gear on this car, you don't really need to go up to it all that often, because I'm already at 60 miles an hour. Clutch in, fifth gear, release clutch while putting in gas. I'm already at 60 miles an hour. Usually it's only highways and parkways and such. So if you're just on city driving, I mean, it's pretty unnecessary. So I'm gonna show you guys fifth all the way down to second, just going one by one. Fourth, clutch in, third, clutch in, second. And that was just very unnecessary. I just don't see a reason why you should have to just row through each gear. If you like doing that and you don't mind the wear that it's going to do on your clutch, then go ahead. But to me, it's just not really worth doing. But again, to each their own. Now I'm going to show you guys skipping gears. Now again, we're going to go up to fourth gear. Clutch in, fourth gear, release the clutch while pressing in on the gas. Just a little bit. You don't have to launch the gas or go ham on anything. Just very smooth, chill, easy. You don't want to kill any parts of your car. Now, another advantage that manuals have over automatics is gas mileage. If you're putting it in the correct gear at the correct time, you can lower the amount that the engine is spinning and in turn maximize gas mileage. Now, in a car like this, I mean, it's already I think it only had like 15 miles to the gallon when it was new. It's 2001, so that's obviously deteriorated over time just a little bit, and it's got a check engine light evap related, so it's not gonna be, so sometimes I bother, sometimes I don't. It's a toss-up. Sometimes I'll just be like, hey, yeah, but most of the time it's just doomed from the start. I'm not gonna be able to really optimize it like that because there's no point. It's gonna run out of gas so fast. Alright, so now I released the gas and look, we're slowing down. Once you get to the right speed, I'm going to go from fourth to second. So fourth, up to the left, into second. And would you look at that? We're slowing down. We're coming to a smooth, slow stop. Now I'm obviously going to go up a little bit more and come to a complete stop. Now, again, a lot of people's complaints with manuals is that they don't want to do work while they drive. And I understand that. I get it. But the satisfaction of doing it and the autopilotedness of a manual transmission after a while just kind of beats that, because you don't notice shifting after a while. Like, it just becomes second nature to you, and you start being able to do new things like optimizing smoothness or rev matching or floating, which I will teach both of those in another video. I'm not too good at rev matching, so that video might not be so good. Or maybe I won't do that one at all, but I'll try to explain it best as I can. But I do know how to float pretty well, so. And this is the only manual transmission car that I own, or that I will ever own, that I will probably ever want to float in, unless it's like a unsynchronized. But then again, I could just double clutch in that, which I also know how to do. And you start to learn more things: double clutching, rev matching, floating. You start to learn how to drive smoother, how to drive more precise, how to maximize gas mileage, things like that. And it becomes so unbelievably autopilot. You stop worrying about, oh, how am I gonna change gears and do this, that, and the other, and you kind of just start driving. Now, I'm gonna go into third or second gear. While I usually use the brakes and downshifting. It allows me to kind of ease on the brakes while I slow down through downshifting. So it helps my brakes. It helps me not have to get on the brakes as much. Now, once again, clutch in, fourth gear, release clutch while you give it a little bit of gas. Nothing too insane, okay? You're not going to be smooth, you're not going to be precise, you're not going to be amazing, you might grind, you might stall. It happens. It happens to everybody. Grinding is a little less common. It is a little less common than stalling. Actually, probably a lot less common than stalling, because stalling is the very first and the very most you'll be doing. That you will, until you understand how to not stall, that is what you will be doing the most. So it's just something that you kind of need to get and understand, because stalling, it's very embarrassing, especially doing it at a light. I learned in New York how to drive manual, and New York City folk do not let off when it comes to the horn. They do not let off the horn, and it can be very, very intimidating, especially if you're learning in a hillier area. Clutch in, second gear, clutch out. Now when you downshift, you don't have to give it any gas because you're slowing the car down, so why would you want to give it any gas? You can, but you're trying to slow the car down. Clutch in, third gear, release clutch while giving a little bit of gas. And then fourth gear, clutch in, fourth gear, give it a little gas while releasing the clutch. Easy. But yeah, if you live in a very hilly area, and I'm very sorry I can't do hills for this video, it's essentially the same concept. I will show you guys a parking brake start once I get back to the parking lot, which is pretty much mostly what you're going to have to be doing for hills until you can get them down a little bit better. And I would practice in like a back road or something where you're not going to have that many people behind you if you want to try out hills, because it's better to fail on a back road where nobody's behind you than it is to fail when, you know, you might roll back into somebody. And that doesn't happen. It doesn't roll back as fast as you think. I always thought I would just fly back as fast as possible into the guy behind me, but it's a pretty gradual roll. It depends on how steep the hill is as well. In New York, obviously those hills were pretty beefy, so I had to deal with a pretty fast rollback. And you're gonna over rev it a lot when you're doing those hills and you're starting out, but it's just, you gotta get it down. Release the brake, get to the bite point and release while you give it a little bit more gas than you usually will, but it's a little bit of a fast motion. I live in Florida, so it's kind of hard to find hills here, especially hills that I will be able to show you guys on. I will try to find one and just add it into the video. It's going to be a completely different section, but I will try to find one for this video. Now, around here, and I understand that a lot of people are very tribal, very cultish when it comes to manual transmissions, but you know, this isn't the manual transmission Olympics. Everybody's gonna be saying, oh, I do this because it's better, or you should do that because it's better, and well, some of it's pretty solid advice. A lot of it's just jargon that people will just start spewing just to make themselves seem like they're better or they know more. It's the manual transmission Olympics, which I'm not a part of. I drive manual because I enjoy it. I drive manual because it's fun. This is not the road. I drive manual because I think I feel more connected to the car. I feel more connected to the car, and there's no problem with that. I'm not a part of the manual transmission Olympics, so you're not going to hear me saying, oh, this is the far most optimal way to do this, that, and the other. It's just not who I am. All right. Around here. I'm sorry if this video is not in depth enough. I do tend to forget to say stuff, or I'll miss something and I'll be too far in to be able to go back. So I'll just mention it later. And I'm not a part of the manual transmission Olympics, nor am I a mechanic, so it's kind of hard to give super sound advice on the true mechanics of this and how it really works, and describing it down to the T isn't something I've had to do too many times or have heard too many times, so it's not something I'm going to be as good at explaining as somebody else. Third to second, and I didn't really have to hit the brakes there. I had my foot hovering over the brakes a little bit, which you always should do, but didn't really have to. So, back to the parking lot. I will show you guys a parking brake start. It's a little bit, it's just another thing to know. It's always good to have more knowledge, right? Complete stop, even though I didn't at that stop sign earlier, but we don't talk about that. Come into here, all right. Put into neutral. Parking brake up. Now you'll notice a parking brake start does not work in reverse. It does not. A parking brake start will only work going forward. So, clutch in, put the gear shifter into first gear, and give it a little more gas while you release the clutch slowly. And you'll notice it really crawling, and as you notice it crawling, hit that button and just put it down. So I'll show you guys that again. After this, I'll show you guys reversing. I just want to make sure you guys can go forward. Now, after this, I will be showing you guys reversing. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew how to go forward and how to drive around before you guys knew how to reverse. Just because reversing isn't as integral as going forward. You can get around pretty well without reverse. Just a little bit, but... Alright. So, parking brake start again. Clutch in, first gear. Release the clutch as you give it a little bit more gas than you usually would. You don't have to, but especially if you're on a hill, you're going to have to. Once it starts moving, parking brake down. Alright, now for reverse. So, some cars reverse is, if you're sitting on that side of the steering wheel, it's going to be, or if you're sitting on that side of the car, it's going to be over here, usually. Some cars, you press a button on the it's like an overhang, and you press a button, put it into first, and it registers. Some cars like this one have a whole different slot for it. It's the British or the right-hand drive version, which would be over here, but just flipped around. So, down and to the right. Now, reversing can be a little bit more difficult. At least it was for me. It's going to feel a little bit different, but it's the same concept. Find the bite point and just ease on the gas. And once it starts moving, you can come off. And it will feel like it's going a little bit faster, and it might actually be going a little bit faster, but it's fairly uncomfortable. All right. Back into reverse, and you don't even need the gas a lot of the time. And I know riding the clutch isn't the best thing in the world, but I find that I don't reverse that often, so it's okay if once in a while I ride the clutch while I'm in reverse, especially because if you're only reversing a couple of meters, you don't want to take your foot off the clutch and then you just gotta go in and slam it really hard after that. Or I think it's better off if you know what you're doing and where you are and how far you need to go, it's okay if you ride the clutch on that. In first gear, second gear, third gear, whatever, you don't want to be riding the clutch. It's bad. But I feel like in reverse, you don't. I don't. It really depends on how much you go into reverse. I don't really go into reverse that often, and even when I do, I very rarely ride the clutch anyways. But I give myself a pass when I do it in reverse, because I only ever do it to just get out of my driveway or get out of a parking spot or whatever. So reverse. Release the clutch to the brake point, give it a little gas, and release the clutch. And there you go, you got reverse. I don't know why my car is making one of those weird noises, it's like popping. Alright guys, I found a hill that I will be showing you how to do hill starts on. So, it's very simple. Day later, I'm in shorts now. It's very simple. You can do the parking brake start. I already showed you guys how to do that. It works the same for hills, just a little bit more gas, right? But put it into first gear. You have your foot on the brake, holding as hard as you can, because you might be a little nervous, whatever, if you're on a public road or you have somebody behind you, whatnot. Foot on the brake, you got the foot on the clutch. Now, what you're going to do is, it can be a very quick maneuver. You can do it a little slower, but you have to remove your foot from the brake, and as you do that, release the clutch a little bit faster than you would if you were doing a regular start, and release it a little bit more. As you saw, I rolled back a little bit, but you can get faster and faster with it. Release brake, release clutch, and give it some gas. The steeper the hill, the more acceleration you're going to be inclined to just naturally want to do. So you might end up revving it up a little bit. That's not that big of an issue if you only do it once in a while. But here we go. And depending on how high the bite point is on your vehicle as well. But make sure you release it all the way. I still have that problem sometimes because I don't live by very many hills. So it can be a little difficult to remember, like, dude, release the clutch all the way. Don't hold it too much. And as you saw, I just listened to that. Now there is a better way. You can hold the clutch up a little bit higher, not to the bite point. If you have a lower bite point, this will be a little bit harder. That way, you have to release it just a little bit less than you would if you had it all the way down. So release it up, maybe about halfway from all the way down to the bite point, so that halfway in between those two, and then boom. Still a little bit of an incline here. As you can see, I rolled back a little bit. Release brake, release clutch, give it some gas. You don't want to do it too fast, too hard, or too slow. It's that simple. That was about it. Very quick. It's going to be the same as a regular start. I mean, you're going to have your foot on the clutch, maybe the brake at a stoplight. But overall, It's going to be more or less the same, just a little bit quicker. So, yeah. Been doing that for a long time, whatever. Anyways, I'm very sorry if I'm not the best at describing this stuff. There's plenty of other videos out there. If this one wasn't right for you, then there's other ones out there that have plenty of views, and you could always check those out. I really only care if you guys learn how to drive manual. It's always good to know more things, and it's always good to engage in car culture like this, upholding the classic traditional ways of driving. As these are getting phased out more and more around the world, it's good to learn. So I don't really care too much if you didn't find this helpful, as long as it didn't kill your motivation to drive manual or whatever. I just want you guys to know how to drive manuals and have fun doing it, and to stay motivated. I don't want you guys to feel like it's too hard or you can't do it, because you can. Anybody can do it. There's plenty of people that aren't, very many degenerates out there in the world that know how to drive manual. I'm sure you can. I know a lot of the older people make it sound super scary, but it doesn't take that long. It might take you maybe 5-10 minutes to learn how to start, another like 5-10 minutes to learn how to shift, and before you know it, you're out on the road. I mean, it'll take a little longer to start sometimes, but it's not as hard as the older people say. I think they just want to sound a little cool, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they just have that, like, oh, this is how we used to do it, so it's better, so we're going to make it seem crazy, like we used to go to school uphill both ways kind of thing, trying to romanticize struggle. I don't know, but trust me, it is not as hard as these people make it seem, and I'm sorry if this wasn't in-depth enough. I'm not a manual transmission Olympics gold medalist. I'm not a mechanic, and I haven't had much experience teaching or being taught. I was taught, and then that was it. I haven't sat in and watched somebody get taught. I haven't pretty much any how to drive manual videos. This is my understanding of it. I obviously read on Google how this stuff works. I've seen the videos on how manual transmissions work, and that's all my understanding of it. And this will be episode 1 of probably a 3 or 4 part series called Driving Masterclass. Next episode will probably be the next easiest thing, which in my opinion would probably be floating gears. And again, this is really the only video that's going to be essential. You don't need to learn how to rev match. You don't need to learn how to double clutch unless you're in an unsynchronized transmission. And you don't need to learn how to float gears unless you're in a semi-truck, which I don't know how to shift semi-trucks just yet. I hope I learn one day, 18 speed, 13 speed, 10 speed, whatever. But I'm just going by what's easiest, so it'll probably be this, then floating, then double clutching, and then rev matching. I personally think rev matching is probably the hardest one to get down, especially depending on what gear you're trying to rev match. I think 5th to 4th is usually pretty easy, 4th to 3rd is easy, but 3rd to 2nd can be really hard. And especially heel and toe is included in rev matching, and I think that's probably the hardest thing you can learn in a regular manual car. I personally think floating gears is a lot easier, even though it's technically kind of rev matching, but you don't really have to do any of it while you're braking. So, that was it for this video. If you liked it, please like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, please tell me. Just give me some pointers on how I can describe it better. I want to be able to teach more people in person in the future. So if you have any constructive criticism to give me, I'm 100% open to hearing it. If you're just a manual transmission Olympics gold medalist, silver medalist, bronze medalist, and you're just here to hate, I mean, go ahead and whatever floats your boat. But that was a good video. I hope to see you guys next time for Driving Masterclass episode 2. So yeah, see ya.